Okay, today we are going to learn about Indian history for UPSC Civil Service exam. Indian history. For the ease of studying the subject, historians have divided every history, world history, Indian history, or history of any country into three major portions or three major periods, which are ancient, medieval, and modern history. For the sake of studying history, it is easy if we follow timelines in history. The best way to learn history is by knowing the story and then making your own timeline, so that you won't forget the years or names of people. You won't mix them up. So the way in which we are also going to take the class will be like that. We'll have a timeline for the entire history, which will be very brief, so that we will know what is going to happen in each period. After that, we will take each individual period and we will see the timeline of that period in depth. Then we will go into the subject. So, what is ancient history? Ancient history spans a period from we can say that the ancient history will span from the period when the humans have actually born, or from time immemorial. But for the sake of our exam, we only have to study in detail from around 3000 BC period till we can have a demarcation of around 700 AD, which means from 3000 BC to 700 AD, that period will be concerning for us for studying for the exam of UPSC. And from 700 AD till 1700 AD, we can classify the period into medieval history. And from 1700 AD till 1947 AD, the history can be classified or termed as modern history. We are stating this period for studying Indian history. These time periods are not hard and fast, which means that it can be changed by different historians, but roughly this is the period that we are going to see in ancient history, and this is the period that we are going to see in medieval history, and this will be the period that we will be seeing in modern history. Then there is a question that will be coming up, is that after 1947, isn't there any history? There is history. We can in vague we can say that till yesterday there was history from 1947, and that history we can call it as contemporary history. Contemporary history, or in Indian history it will be known as contemporary India or post-independent India, because we know that we got independence in 1947. We are considering the history from 1947 till date. So it can also be known as post-independent India or post-independent Indian history. So there are basically four sections. In these four sections, contemporary history or contemporary India will be dealt later at a later point of time. So what in this whole history session we will be covering ancient history, medieval history, and modern history. And the brief timeline of these three periods is that from each period we can consider two major events that had shaped the history of that period. So in ancient history we can say that there are two important events that had shaped ancient history in India, and the first event will be ancient civilizations. The starting of ancient or the establishment of ancient civilizations in the Indian subcontinent. And the second important event is from the ancient civilization, how ancient kingdoms came into existence in our country. So the next important event is ancient kingdoms, the beginning of ancient kingdoms in India. So in ancient history, the two major or important events are ancient civilizations and ancient kingdoms. This doesn't mean that only these two events happened in that period. There are so many things that have happened in this period, but I am just projecting two important things so that we will know what happened in the course of time from 3000 BC till 1947 AD. The next period is medieval history. And in medieval history, the two important events that we are taking into consideration are, as we know, in the ancient history, the ancient kingdoms came into existence. The first kings and kingdoms in India came to existence. And in medieval history period, the first Islamic kings came. So the first important event is Islamic rule of India. Rulers who belong to the Islamic religion came to India. Islamic rule of India. Islamic rule of India. There were two sets of Islamic or Muslim rulers in India. So the first set of Muslim rulers who came to India were the Delhi Sultans, or the Delhi, they were collectively known as the Delhi Sultanate. The Delhi Sultanate. We will study the different dynasties who had ruled the Delhi Sultanate later. And the next set of Muslim rulers who had ruled India were the Mughal Empire, the Mughal kings. The Mughal Empire. Okay, so the first important event in medieval history is Islamic rule of India. In that there are two sets of Islamic rulers, the Delhi Sultanate and the Mughal Empire. And the second important event is the advent of Europeans. Europeans came to India. Why? Why did the Europeans came to India? The Europeans effectively went to different countries in the world around 1800 AD, 1600 to 1800 AD. During that period, they had went to different countries in the world for trade. So, such Europeans came to India also. Traders from 5 different European countries came to India. Traders from 5 different European countries came to India. And they were the Portuguese, the British, the Dutch, the Danish, and French. This is not the exact order, I have just asked you for the name. Okay, so 5 European powers came to India. They were the Portuguese, the British, the Dutch, the French, and the Danish. Where are the Danish people from? The Danes or Danish people came from Denmark. The Dutch came from Holland. Or currently its name is Netherlands. The Dutch came from Holland, or currently it's known as Netherlands. Okay. And French came from France, English or British came from England, and Portuguese came from Portugal. So these are the 5 Europeans who came to India for trade purposes. But later, some of them established tried to establish their role in India. So these are the 2 important events in medieval history. Then comes modern history, and in modern history, the 2 events can be guessed easily, because among the 5 Europeans who came to India, one country established a majority rule in our country, and those people were the British. The British rule of India was the first important event. The British rule of India. And the second important event in modern history was to expel this British rule from our country, which is our Indian independence struggle or freedom movement. Indian independence struggle or our freedom movement. So this is in effective the shortest timeline of our country from 3000 BC to 1947. It's the shortest timeline, so that we will know which period came when, what all things were there, the effective chronological order of it. So in ancient history, the 2 important things were: first, ancient civilizations came in our country. Then from those ancient civilizations, ancient kingdoms came into existence in our country. Then we were started to be ruled by kings, and after that, during the medieval period, Islamic rulers came to India and established their rule. The first set of Islamic rulers who had ruled India were the Delhi Sultanate or the Sultans of Delhi, and the second set of rulers who ruled India were Islamic rulers who ruled India were the Mughal rulers or the Mughal Empire. And then in the subsequent history, Europeans came to do trade in India. And they had alliances with the rulers. They tried to get support from the rulers, and ultimately they started to overpower these rulers, and among them the Britishers established their role in India, which we will study, or which happened during the modern period of Indian history. And then the Indian independence struggle started, and finally in 1947 AD we got independence, and our history during these 3 periods ends here. Okay, now we will start with ancient history. Okay, now we will start with ancient history, but before that I'll give you a list of important textbooks that you should cover for studying history period. Okay, so for ancient history, ancient, medieval and modern history, have to see old NCERTs. Read the old NCERTs. For ancient history, you have to refer R.S. Sharma's textbook. The soft copy of the same will be available on our app, on your profile, you will get it. Then for medieval history, the text is called as medieval history and the author is Satish Chandra. And for modern history, you have to refer the old NCERT, modern history, and the author is Bipin Chandra. Then for ancient and medieval history, you can refer Tamil Nadu Board 11th standard and 10th standard history textbook. And for modern history, you have to follow or read if you get the time. Just go through this book by Spectrum Publications on Indian history, modern Indian history. And also there is one more text. If you have time only, read it, because that is a big text. That is quite a big text and it will take a lot of time. This is okay enough for your prelims and mains. If you have time, you go for Bipin Chandra's India's Struggle for Independence. India's Struggle for Independence by Bipin Chandra. Besides these standard textbooks, we have our own study material which will be provided to you. Okay. And right now we are going to see the exhaustive timeline of ancient history. Then we will go into each topic. The first important point or the first landmark event in ancient history that we will have to study is the prehistoric period. Prehistoric period. Prehistoric period is the period before written history was there. Means from the time before any kind of written document was received. So that might be the period when ancient tribal kind of people lived. And that period is divided into two subdivisions. The first one is Stone Age and the second period is Metal Age. In prehistoric people, during prehistoric period, people lived lived individually like nomads. People were traveling from one place to another in search of food and water. And their main methods of getting food will be hunting and gathering. So they will have to use equipments. Equipments were of two types. They used tools and they used weapons. Tools were for making jobs easier for them, like cutting plants, cutting leaves, cutting the skin of an animal, or digging the ground, like that. So they had tools, and they also had weapons for killing or hunting, and also for protection. So these things, these equipments that they had used were initially made from stone and wood. That period is known as Stone Age. And later on, man identified metals and their alloys and started making these equipments out of these metals and alloys. That period came to be known as Metal Age. So according to what material they had used for producing their day-to-day, for producing the equipment that they needed for their day-to-day use, the periods were divided by the historians. And in Stone Age also there were very different periods with different kinds of equipment that they had used, marking different history. So the Stone Age was divided into three by the historians. The first one is Paleolithic. Paleolithic period. We will study this in another session in detail. Lithic means stone. Paleolithic, Mesolithic and Neolithic period. The time period of these periods are: Paleolithic period is from 5 lakh BC to 8000 BC. Mesolithic period is from 8000 BC to 4000 BC. And Neolithic period is from 4000 BC to 1800 BC. So this was the period when man had used stones for making their tools and equipment, tools and weapons. And subsequently man identified copper for the first time. Copper was the first metal that man had identified, and he also started to discover, or he invented its alloy called bronze, and he started making these tools and equipments, these tools and weapons with bronze and copper. And that period came to be known as the Metal Age, and Metal Age was subsequently divided into two periods because of two different kinds of things that were used. The first period was Chalcolithic period or Bronze Age. Chalcolithic period or Bronze Age, which was from 1800 BC till 1000 BC. And the next period was starting from the discovery of iron, which is known, and the period is known as Iron Age. Iron Age is effectively from 1000 BC. Okay. So the first important event in ancient history is prehistoric period. Prehistoric period can be divided into Stone Age and Metal Age. Stone Age is of three parts or three periods, sub-periods: Paleolithic period, Mesolithic period and Neolithic period. Paleolithic period is from 5 lakh BC to 8000 BC, and Mesolithic period is from 8000 BC to 4000 BC, and Neolithic period is from 4000 BC till 1800 BC. And the next period was the Metal Age, and the first period in Metal Age was from the identification and discovery and use of copper and its alloy bronze, and that period came to be known as Chalcolithic period or Bronze Age, which was from 1800 BC till 1000 BC, and from 1000 BC it is the Iron Age. So the first important event in ancient history is prehistoric period, and after that the next important event is Indus Valley Civilization. Indus Valley Civilization. The time period of which is from 2500 BC till 1500 BC. The Indus Valley Civilization had originated around 3000 BC, and it had gradually evolved to its maximum or to its matured phase, where everything was in a very crisp and clear form, and from 2500 BC till 1500 BC it existed in its matured form. But for the sake of studying, we only consider it from 2500 BC till 1500 BC, which was its golden period. So the second important period in our timeline is Indus Valley Civilization. And the third important period in ancient history is Vedic period. It was the period when a set of foreigners came to India known as Aryans, who had written the Vedic text. And that period is known as Vedic period, which existed from 1500 BC till 600 BC. But the period was in turn subdivided into two sections by the historians, called as the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period. The early Vedic period was from 1500 BC till 1000 BC, and the later Vedic period was from 1000 BC till 600 BC. And as we can see, the division was around 1000 BC. Why did the division came at this time? And what was the division and what is the difference? The things that were in existence in the Vedic society during the early Vedic period was completely changed into something else during the later Vedic period, because of something that had happened in the 1000 BC, which was the invention of iron. Iron was invented and equipments and tools were started to be made from this metal, and it had drastically changed a lot of things during that period, and hence historians can clearly demarcate two different kinds of lifestyle and society and ruling and religion and everything in Vedic period. So they named it accordingly and divided into two subdivisions, so two sub periods, which is known as the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period. So our third important period is the Vedic period, which is from 1500 BC till 600 BC. And now we have reached a time of 600 BC. In 600 BC, three important things had happened. And the first important thing is that two important religions came into existence in India. The Buddhism and the Jainism. Around 600 BC, these two new religions came into existence because of the problems that were in existence or that were prevalent during the later Vedic period. During the later Vedic period, the society had its own religion and religious leaders and everything. But the problems created by such religion or the Vedic religion had made the people so much of problem, and they were fed up with that Vedic religion and they wanted to have new religions and established new religions called Buddhism and Jainism. And in the later Vedic period, earlier kingdoms in India came into existence, and those kingdoms were called Janapadas. During later Vedic period, our kingdoms in India came into existence, which were known as Janapadas. And during 600 BC, out of the small kingdoms in India or Janapadas in India, some became very prominent, bigger in size and powerful, and they were known as Mahajanagaras. And in 600 BC, around 600 BC period, there were 16 major kingdoms in India called the Mahajanagaras. Mahajanapadas. There were 16 in number. Around 600 BC, they were there in existence. And out of the 16 Mahajanapadas, one became the most prominent and powerful one, and that is known as Magadha. Around 600 BC, Magadha, the Mahajanapada, became prominent or the most powerful. So our timeline is ineffective. From prehistoric period, the next important event that we have to study is Indus Valley Civilization, which is from 2500 BC to 1500 BC. Then comes Vedic period, which is from 1500 BC till 600 BC, which is subdivided into early Vedic period, which is from 1500 BC till 1000 BC, and later Vedic period, which is from 1000 BC till 600 BC. And then comes 600 BC, where there are three important events. The establishment of new religions like Buddhism and Jainism around 600 BC. The establishment of 16 big kingdoms known as Mahajanapadas in 600 BC. And out of these Mahajanapadas, one became prominent, which is called the Magadha. Magadha had ruled India for around 1200 years, from 600 BC till 570 AD. Which is approximately 1200 years. 600 BC till 180, it's 600 years. But from 180 to 570 AD, it is around another 600 years. And in total, it's around 1200 years. Not exactly 1200 years, but around 1200 years. In some textbooks, it will be 580 AD. That's okay. It varies from source to source. Okay. So Magadha actually was a Mahajanagara, which means a bigger kingdom. Magadha existed in power under different dynasties. Magadha was ruled by so many dynasties. We are going to see the dynasties that had ruled Magadha. Initially, Magadha existed as a Mahajanagara, as a big kingdom of India. Later, it became even bigger than that. It became empire. It became an empire. Empire means a large kingdom with territories outside its boundaries. It had conquered territories outside its boundaries, even across the seas. It had conquered territories. When we look into the history of Magadha at a later period of time, we will know that it's such a big kingdom that it existed from Afghanistan region till Bangladesh, and from Kashmir to Karnataka region. It was such a big kingdom. When you look into the map, you will know the vastness of the kingdom. It goes beyond the borders of current border of India like from Afghanistan till Bangladesh it goes, from Kashmir till Karnataka it goes. It was such a big kingdom. It had even conquered many parts like outside our present border, like Sri Lanka, Indonesia. Many parts it had conquered. So the dynasties that had ruled Magadha were, first one, Aryankas. The second dynasty that had ruled Magadha was Shishunagas. The next dynasty that had ruled Magadha was Nandas. During the time period of these three dynasties, Magadha existed as a Mahajanagaras. During the period of Nandas and during the subsequent and during the rule of the subsequent dynasty that came next, foreign invasions to India came for the first time. Invasions are a country's army getting inside another country without their permission and for attacking and conquering or for looting. So foreign invasions came for the first time in India, and for our sake of studying, I am going to classify them as a single set. These are the first set of foreign invasions that came to India. Foreign invasions first. It was not after Nandas and not before the next dynasty. It was during the Nandas and during the period of the next dynasty. It was in parallel with the Nandas and with the next dynasty that ruled Magadha. And there were two invasions during this period from two different countries. The first ever invasion that came to India was from Persia, or Persian invasions. And the second invasion came from Macedonia. Macedonian invasion. You will know the name of Macedonian invasion in another way. It was a small Greek kingdom ruled by Alexander the Great. As we all know, it was the invasion of Alexander the Great. He was a Greek king from the Greek country called as Macedonia. Where is Persia? This is India. This is Pakistan. This is Afghanistan. This is China, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and here comes Iran. Roughly this is what Asia looks like. Here's Saudi Arabia. This is Arabian Peninsula, and this is the end of Asia, or the western end of Asia. Then here comes Iraq, Syria, like that countries will be there. Okay, so this is Afghanistan, and modern Iran is the old Persia. Persia is modern Iran region. Okay, and this is the Tibetan region of China. The autonomous region within China is called Tibet, that is here. Okay, the next dynasty that had ruled Magadha was Mauryas. The Mauryas came, they defeated Nandas and established the Maorian Empire. It was the first ever empire in India that ruled India. So, consider till this point of time, Magadha existed as a small kingdom, as a Mahajanagaras. From there, another kingdom came into existence called Mauryas or Maorian Empire. They had made it their capital. See, all the dynasties that we are going to study, some of them became empires. Then in later point of time also another empire comes. All of them are ruling from the capitals or points centering around Magadha, so that we can mark their rule that will continue till 570 AD. None of the empires at a later point, none of the countries at a later point of time will be ever known as Magadha. But all these countries have used Magadha or its capitals as their initial or main centers or capitals. Hence, we are continuing the period as we are considering the period as a continuation of the rule of Magadha or dynasty centering around Magadha. Hence, we are classifying it till or studying it till 570 AD. Okay. None of the countries or empires or dynasties later uses the name Magadha, but it's there. Okay. So the next one is Magadha Empire. After Magadha, Magadha is pretty important, and we have to know the time period of Magadha, which is from 322 BC till 187 BC. In some textbook it will be 185 BC, it's okay. And the next dynasty that ruled Magadha was Sungas. After Sungas came the Kanvas. Both of them were Brahmanical dynasties. Usually ruling was done by Kshatriyas. But here in these two dynasties, the kings belong to the Brahmanical caste. And hence these two dynasties are known as Brahmanical dynasties, because the kings came from Brahmanical religion. After that comes the last dynasty of Magadha, which was also an empire, which was the Guptas, the Gupta Empire. And the time period of Guptas is from 320 AD till 570 AD. So the dynasties that ruled Magadha are Haryangas, Shishunagas, Nandas, Mauryas, Sungas, Kanvas, and Guptas, or the Gupta Empire. And during the long period of Gupta Empire also, foreign invasions came to India. I'm going to write it after Gupta Empire, but that doesn't mean that it happened after the period of Guptas. It happened during the period of Guptas, and I'm classifying it as the foreign invasion second. This is my classification for the sake or easiness of studying. Okay, and it is foreign invasion second. In the foreign invasion second, I don't have space here to write, so I'll write it here. In the foreign invasion second, there were 3 invasions from 3 different countries. The first one was Bactrian invasion. Bactria, not bacteria, Bactria. Bactrian invasion. Bactria was also another Greek kingdom. Just like Macedonia, Bactria is also another Greek country. Then comes the invasion of the Sakas, Saka invasion. It's also known as Shakas, Saka invasion. And the third one is Kushana invasion. Kushana, invasion of Kushanas or Kushana invasion. So these are the 3 invasions during the Gupta period, which I have classified as the foreign invasion second. Bactrian invasion, Saka invasion, and Kushana invasion. The famous Kanishka belonged to the Kushana race. Okay. So these are the dynasties of Magadha. Haryangas, Shishunagas, Nandas during and later period came the foreign invasion first, which had Persian invasion and Macedonian invasion. Then comes the next dynasty, Maorian Empire, which is from 322 BC till 187 BC. Then comes Sungas and Kanvas, who were Brahmanical dynasties. Then comes the last dynasty, which is the Gupta Empire, which is from 320 AD till 570 AD. And then during the period of Guptas, there is the foreign invasion second, which is from 3 different countries: Bactrian invasion, Saka invasion, and Kushana invasion. So now, rule of Magadha came into an end. With the end of the Gupta Empire, the rule of North India, or the major portion of North India, by the kingdoms around that had centered around Magadha came to a stop. Now another kingdom comes into existence, which centered around UP region, and that was known as Kanauj. Next important event is the rule of Kanauj. Kanauj was not as big as a country or a kingdom as Magadha, but it was also a major kingdom that had ruled a bigger portion of North India. And the dynasties that had ruled Kanauj were the Mokkaris, The second dynasty that had ruled Kanauj was the Pushyabhuttis. And the ruler of Pushyabhutti, or the most important ruler of Kanauj, was King Harshavardhan. King Harshavardhan, who ruled from 606 AD till 648 AD. Some historians also call the Pushyabhutti dynasty as Vardhanas. That's okay. From his name Harshavardhan, they also call it as Vardhanas. Okay. So the second dynasty is Pushyabhuttis, and the ruler of Pushyabhutti was King Harshavardhan, the most important ruler of Kanauj. His time period was from 606 AD till 648 AD. And after Pushyabhuttis, it was ruled by King Yashovarman. King Yashovarman. After King Yashovarman, there was a political vacuum. We don't know what had happened in the history during that period. Then, after that comes the tripartite conflict. Tripartite conflict. The tripartite conflict was for the for conquering the rule of Kanauj. Tripartite means there were three parties for the battle. Two kingdoms initially fought between each other, and the country who had won the battle again had to fight with a third country to get the rule of Kanauj. It had lasted for a period of 50 years between three countries. We will see that later. And the country that, or the dynasty that became successful in the tripartite conflict was the Pratiharas. The Pratiharas was a Rajput clan. They belonged to the Rajput families. And then last dynasty of Kanauj was Gahadwalis. Both of them were Rajput clans. Both of them were Rajput families. Actually, after the period of Harshavardhan, it's around 700 AD. The ancient history period almost ends here. Ancient history. And the medieval history period begins. But we are studying all this together in ancient history. So the dynasties that had ruled Kanauj were the Mokharis, the Pushyabhuttis, then comes King Yashovarman, then there is the most important tripartite conflict, then the Pratiharas and the Gahadwalis, which were, both of them were Rajput clans. The last dynasty of Kanauj was Gahadwalis. The Gahadwalis and the dynasty that had ruled Kanauj before it was the Pratiharas. Both of them were Rajput clans. These clans were defeated because of the invasion of some rulers from Afghanistan region. These rulers from Afghanistan region belong to the Turkish race. We will see in detail later. So there were two set of Turkish rulers from Afghanistan who had invaded India. Turkish invasion from Afghanistan. The first one was Mahmud Ghazni. And the second one was Muhammad Ghori. Actually, it is like Mahmud from Ghazna, who was later known as Mahmud Ghazni. It was Muhammad from Ghor, who was later known as Muhammad Ghori. Ghazna and Ghor are the names of their kingdoms in Afghanistan. Okay, so these two invaders came to India for two different reasons, and their invasions caused a lot of historical change in our country. Okay, so the last topic that we will study in ancient history is the Turkish invasions from Afghanistan, Mahmud Ghazni and Muhammad Ghori. These events are actually happening in the medieval history period. Okay, so these are the basic history of North India. Then there is history of Deccan region and South India. The history of Deccan region and South India, we will be seeing ancient and medieval history together. So the next important thing that we will study will be history of Deccan. History of Deccan. And next important thing that we will study is Southern dynasties. Southern dynasties. Or the dynasties of South India. Okay, this is the timeline that we will cover first, then we will go into medieval history. Which was the first civilization in India? we'll all say it is Indus Valley Civilization, which was correct till recently, but which is not correct now. Because in 1980s, the National Institute of Ocean Technology had sent a ship for studying the waste deposition in this region. What is the name of this region? It's a gulf. Is it Gulf of Mannar? No, it is. This is the Gulf of Mannar. This region between India and Sri Lanka, or Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka, this is the Gulf of Mannar. Is it the Gulf of Kutch? No, it is this region, Gulf of Kutch. And this region is called the Gulf of Kambat. The Gulf of Kambat. Or previously during the British period it was called as Cambay. It was called the Gulf of Cambay. And in 1980s, our Indian government had, the agency under Indian government, the National Institute of Ocean Technology, had sent a ship to study about the waste that is deposited under the sea in this region, the Gulf of Kambat. And accidentally they had identified a submerged city. A submerged city meaning a city that's underwater. A submerged city. And they have taken the artifacts or things from there and had done radiocarbon dating to calculate the time period, and they had came to know that this city existed during 7500 BC. Our Indus Valley civilization was in its peak at 2500 BC, and this civilization existed even 5000 years before that. And they had named this civilization as the Gulf of Kambat culture. The Gulf of Kambat culture. This civilization was named as the Gulf of Kambat culture. It was identified in 1980s by the National Institute of Ocean Technology, and it is a submerged city which existed during 7500 BC. Due to some unknown reasons, the Indian government had not done much studying on this civilization, and they had not given out much data, so we only have to study these much things. And there is one mythology kind of thing going on, that some people consider this is the submerged city of Lord Krishna. In Mahabharata, at the end, there is this Dwaraka, the city of Lord Krishna, which was completely covered by the sea at the end of the story. And some people think this is Dwaraka, the ancient submerged city of Lord Krishna. So very few points are there. There was an ancient civilization in India before Indus Valley civilization, which was known as the Gulf of Kambat culture, which existed around 7500 BC. It was identified by the National Institute of Ocean Technology in the 1980s. Some people consider it as the mythological city called Dwaraka, which was the city of Lord Krishna. In older days, people lived a nomadic life. That is, they traveled from one place to another in search of food. And they lived as a single person. They did not live as a community or together. And the main mode of finding food, or the main economy of a nomadic person, was hunting and gathering. Hunting and gathering. They will try to hunt animals and get food. If not, they will try to gather fruits and vegetables and grains and eat. And after some time, they came to know that if they can domesticate some animals for companionship and for the things that they get from them, like egg, milk, meat, so they started domesticating animals. So their economy became hunting, gathering and domestication. Later they came to know that the things that they had gathered, they can cultivate them, and they started agriculture. What does agriculture need? Agriculture needs two important things, which is land and water. But agriculture takes some time. You find a proper land, you sow the seeds, you water them, you have to stay there till the plants grow up and give the fruits or vegetables or grains. So, man was initially nomadic. He moved from one place to another, but he had to settle in some place, at least temporarily, at least from one crop season. So, man started temporary settlement. Also, man started to live in groups, because then things became easier. They came to know that hunting became easier when you did it as a group. You were safe when you lived in a group. Agriculture became easier when you lived in a group. So they started to live in a group. They started community life. They started temporary settlement. Where did they settle? Wherever they did agriculture. Agriculture needs land and water. The best place to do agriculture is river banks. The best place to do agriculture is river banks, because you get plenty of water and fertile soil there. So man settled temporarily at river banks. They tried to find caves there, but not every river bank has caves. So they started to make temporary huts using wood and leaves, like wood stick and leaves. They started to make temporary settlement. Then later they understood that they can take the mud from the river and make settlements. They started to make mud houses. Then they started to make bricks out of mud. They mixed the mud and shaped it into bricks, and they started to make mud brick houses. Then they came to know that these mud bricks, if they keep it in the fire which they use to cook food, it will get burnt and become hard bricks called burnt bricks, which will be more strong and which can be used to make bigger buildings. Hence they started to make bigger buildings, stronger buildings with burned bricks. All these things happened over a long period of time. All these changes happened. And on the river banks, people started to live. More people started to come and settle there. Slowly villages formed there. Over a long period of time, smaller towns came to existence. Small towns means more better and bigger buildings. Like when these change was happening, towns came into existence slowly. And later, when the burnt bricks came into existence, bigger buildings were made. Numerous buildings were made. Then such new cities were formed in the different parts of the world on river banks. Over a long period of time, first cities came into existence. And in the world, around 3000 BC, in 4 different parts of the world, 4 civilizations came into existence. These 4 civilizations came into existence on their own. They were not influencing each other. They came into existence around 3000 BC on their own. But later, they had trade relations. Initially they came into existence or they started on their own, but later they had trade relations. And we are going to see which were those 4 ancient civilizations of the world that existed around 3000 BC. The first civilization that we are going to look is the Mesopotamian Civilization. It existed on the banks of 2 rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. The present location of this civilization is West Asia. Take your map, you will see that this is India. It will go like this. This is Pakistan. This is Afghanistan. This is Iran. Then comes Iraq, Syria. On the Iraq-Syria border, there are 2 rivers. The Tigris Euphrates goes like this. it's kind of a moon shape, crescent shape. It's a pretty dry area because of very less rainfall. It is having deserty conditions. It's a dry area, but because of the presence of these two rivers, the area in between is rich. The area in between is green. You can see in the map, this region is green because of the greenery due to the two flowing rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. And this region is also known as the fertile crescent, the fertile moon-shaped land. It is known as the fertile crescent. So this is the location of Mesopotamian civilization. You can refer your map. And the next civilization that we are going to look is the Indus Valley civilization. Indus Valley civilization. It existed on the banks of not one river but 7 rivers, and that region is known as Sapta Sindhu region. Sapta Sindhu region. In Sanskrit, Sapta means 7 and Sindhu means river or sheet of water. Sapta Sindhu region. Sapta Sindhu region, there are 7 rivers. First one is Indus. Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Bes, Satluj, and the last one is Saraswati, which is not existent today. It is a non-existent river, meaning it is not there now. Saraswati. We came to know that such a river existed from ancient written books like the Vedas. We came to know that there was such a river. So the Indus Valley civilization existed on the banks of these 7 rivers: Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Bes, Satluj and Saraswati. Out of which these 5 rivers are flowing through the land of 5 river or Punjab. Punjab, the word Punjab means land of 5 rivers. These 5 rivers flow from Punjab to Pakistan. This is the north to south order also. The river that flows through the extreme north is Jhelum. To the south of it flows Chenab. To the south of it flows Ravi. To the south of it flows Bes. To the south of it flows Satluj. Have to study this order also. So the 7 rivers on whose banks the Indus Valley civilization is the Indus, the Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Bes, Satluj and Saraswati. And the location of the Indus Valley civilization is northwestern part of Indian subcontinent. The Indian subcontinent. What is the Indian subcontinent? This is Pakistan and this is Afghanistan. This is Nepal. This is China. Then here is Bhutan. It is Bangladesh. Here is Sri Lanka. Here is Myanmar. A set of mountain ranges pass through this portion. It is the Hindu Kush, the Himalayas, the Purvanjal hills, and these set of mountains and hills divide the rest of the continent, rest of Asia from this portion. The rest of Asia will be separated from this portion because of these set of mountains and hills. They act as a kind of wall or barrier. And the portion beyond this to the southern side is called the Indian subcontinent. This is the Indian subcontinent, which has parts of Pakistan, India, China, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Bangladesh. Sometimes some scientists also consider Sri Lanka as part of Indian subcontinent. Okay, so the northwestern part of Indian subcontinent, this is the place. Indus Valley civilization has so many cities and towns and villages. It existed like this. It existed in India. It existed, some existed in Pakistan, some even existed in Afghanistan. So the present location is northwestern part of Indian subcontinent. That is our second civilization, the Indus Valley civilization. The next civilization is ancient Egyptian civilization. Ancient Egyptian civilization. The ancient Egyptian civilization also existed on the banks of River Nile. Where is Egypt located? It is in Africa. This is Asia. Asia ends here with the Saudi Arabia and the Arabian Peninsula. It ends. This is the western side. Then here is our Africa. The continent Africa is here. Above that is the European countries. Europe and other European countries are above that. And there is a land connection between Africa and Asia. Small land connection. It is a peninsula actually. So like a peninsula is a portion covered on three sides with water. It's a peninsula, and that peninsula is called as Sinai Peninsula. Sinai Peninsula. And the first country when you enter through the land connection to Africa is Egypt. So location is Egypt in Africa. Egypt in Africa. All these things kindly refer to your map, so that you will study this and your geography will also get strong. And the next civilization that we have to study is Chinese civilization. And it existed on the banks of river Huanghe. It was earlier called as Huangho, and the new name of Huangho is Huanghe, or it is also known as the Yellow River. It is also known as Yellow River. Location is East China. So the last civilization is Chinese civilization on the banks of Huanghe or Yellow River, and the present location is East China. Okay. So these are the four ancient civilizations that existed around or came into existence around 3000 BC. Okay. So now we are going to study about Indus Valley civilization. Indus Valley civilization. So in this session, we are going to start with the Indus Valley civilization. We will just introduce the civilization. And the Indus Valley civilization came into existence around 3000 BC. Every civilization comes into being over a large steps of evolution, over a large period of time. No civilization will start like, okay, let's start a city, let's build this building, let's build this road, like that it won't start. So it was like a gradual change from a group of people were living there. It was kind of like a village, then it developed, or a period of time became a town, then it developed and became a city. It will take a lot of time. Like that, our Indus Valley civilization also started around 3000 BC. We don't know the exact time. Hence, we don't know which civilization came first. So it started around 3000 BC. It slowly developed, and with the next 500 years, it became the most developed civilization of that period. It had its prominent features marked out. There was not a single city, there were numerous cities. All the cities resembled the same. All the cities had the same kind of making. All those features evolved during this period. And by the time it is 2500 BC, it got into its most advanced form. From 2500 BC, it existed till 750 BC, when the major cities start decline. From 1750 BC till 1500 BC, it was a complete stage of decline of the civilization. 2500 BC till 1700 BC, it was kind of like the golden era of the civilization, golden period of the civilization. Then from 1500 BC, the decline of the civilization started, and it is almost completely declined by 1500 BC. What we are going to study is the time period from 2500 BC till 1500 BC. This is the period to 3000 BC to 2500 BC. It is the period of evolution of it. Okay. The major cities of Indus Valley civilization, or the first city that was identified, was Harappa. The first city that was identified from Indus Valley civilization was Harappa. First city. And the second city that was identified was Mohenjo-daro. Mohenjo-daro. And incidentally, out of all the cities and towns in Indus Valley Civilization, this was the largest city or the largest IVC site or the largest site of Indus Valley Civilization. The largest site of Indus Valley Civilization is Mohenjo-daro. The word Mohenjo-daro means Mound of the Dead. Mound of the Dead. Meaning, these places are identified by people by digging the ground, by excavating the ground. While excavating, they found the city. They were excavating the other places in the city, and they identified a place where there was a heap or mountain of skeleton. Around 24-25 skeletons were there. It was like one skeleton over the other, one skeleton over the other, like that. It was like human bodies were piled up into a small mountain or a small mound. Hence, in the local language, which is called Sindhi, the Mound of the Dead is said as Mohenjo-daro. From that, the city got the name Mohenjo-daro, Mound of the Dead. So the first city identified was Harappa, and the second identified city was Mohenjo-daro, and it is the largest city. And unfortunately, incidentally, both these cities are presently in Pakistan. It was identified, these cities were identified in 1921 and 1922, around that time, by Indian excavators, scientists. Harappa was excavated by Mr. Dayaram Sahini, and Mohenjo-daro was excavated and found by Dr. R.D. Banerjee. See, the years are 1920, 22, around 1920-22 it is. That time we were ruled by the British. And these excavations are done by the Archaeological Department of India. The Archaeological Department of India. The Archaeological Department of India. The Archaeological Department of India was headed by, at that time, the head of the department was headed by Sir John Marshall, the British officer Sir John Marshall. Sir John Marshall. Have you heard the Marshall Islands? If not, kindly find it in the world map, the Marshall Islands. The Marshall Islands is an island owned by Britain or England, and that island is named from this scientist's name. Okay. So the Archaeological Department of India was headed by Sir John Marshall. If there is a question like who identified or who excavated Harappa, and this answer is not there in the option, and Sir John Marshall is there in the option, then this is your answer, because these people worked under Sir John Marshall to identify these places. Actually, this excavation was completed by Dayaram Sahini, but he was working under Sir John Marshall, so he also gets a credit for it. Likewise, Mohenjo-daro was identified by Dr. R.D. Banerjee, and he was also working under Sir John Marshall. So the Archaeological Department of India and the Archaeological Survey does all the surveying work and identify such kind of historical artifacts. Some person is known as a father of the Archaeological Department of India, and that person is Alexander Cunningham. Alexander Cunningham, father of Archaeological Department of India. He is known so because he was the founding director of the Archaeological Department. When the Archaeological Department was first formed in 1860, he became the head of the department. Hence, Alexander Cunningham is known as the father of Archaeological Department of India. Okay. So for this session, this is all that we are covering. We will cover the rest of Indus Valley Civilization in the next session. Thank you.